Hello. Today's tutorial is on two main kind of astrology topics from an advanced astrology sort of point of view, if you like, but I would highly recommend you stick around even if you don't feel like you're an advanced astrologer, or if you feel like you don't have advanced knowledge of astrology, stick around and I'll explain in a moment why. But the topics are house systems, or houses, and aspects. Now, what I won't be doing, and this is what I mean by advanced, is giving you the basics, because there is, just the ocean out there of information on that topic, on those topics, and I'll just be repeating. It's just no, and it doesn't interest me. They never got my juices going or exciting. I never found it exciting to do that. But what I do want to share with you is just, so I'm like 30 plus years living astrologically, not just studying astrology, but also studying my chart and all the rest, but actually living, like, journaling with astrology and the rest. So this is what I've learned, rather, this is where I arrived at. This is my conclusion, almost, if you like. And it does do away with the technicalities, with being precise, with being specific or too technical about either houses or aspects. So, but this is kind of another point I wanna share with you here before we go into it. It's like, who am I for? Who is this channel for? And how I conceive of these tutorials, and what my intention is as I do them. So my intention is not to teach you astrology. My intention is to show you how you can use astrology to learn about yourself. And which is why I think, so this is the piece where if you feel like a beginner, I still say stick around, because really it doesn't matter if you don't know the basics. What I'm going to be sharing here, in fact, I think, the beginner mind is like so much more open and not too worried about the detail, the rules, right? The rules, and the definitions and the precision and whatever. So it's far more open, and actually, it has the space and capacity, and I think it can hit the ground running with what I'm going to be sharing. So I actually encourage, if you're a beginner, to listen to the end, if you find my tutorials and me generally kind of listenable. I would, because it doesn't matter that you don't know what and that I won't be speaking what third house means, and what a planet in certain house means. I'm going to be giving you like a bird's eye view and giving you something different to consider your planets. And I encourage, particularly if you're a beginner, to stay and to then use that what I shared, and go into your chart and see how you can apply that. So just to recap, my tutorials are, and everything I share astrologically on this channel and my Instagram, is to help you, to kind of guide you how to use astrology for yourself, to understand yourself better, not to understand astrology, right? So, and there's a big distinction there. Hopefully I made that clear. Another piece I want to share, and this is a huge topic before I go into the aspects and then houses. And it'll probably be worth one day, if I ever have the will and desire to do, I will make a course on this, or something, or maybe a book, I don't know, but it's a big topic. And it's to become much cleaner in using language of astrology when we, as astrologers, and I have had astrologers that are very good at this, excellent. I'd like to think I'm good at it, but I'm sure I know I can be better and can improve. And I've seen a lot of content out there that it's just not being clean enough. And by that I mean, so just a simple example. I had a relatively recent conversation with someone about aspects, and and they had a conjunction of I think it was Mars and Jupiter, I think. and there was opposition to Pluto. Yes, I think I remember now. And they were using the word intensity, and they thought they were talking about Mars and Jupiter. And immediately my red flag. And this someone is like a beginner, and it's, you know, even if it isn't a beginner, it doesn't matter. But it was like, no, Mars and Jupiter are not intensity. And then I was basically, you know, helping them, guiding them, or just clarifying for them that essentially the word intensity, that they're using it to identify the problem maybe of something that they're feeling, is not coming from that conjunction, because the word intensity doesn't belong to either Mars or Jupiter, even if Mars or Jupiter or both are in Scorpio. The word intensity belongs to Pluto, and it really just does belong to Pluto. So in this particular example I just shared with you, the language of the problem, I don't know if there was a problem even being shared. It doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter. But just the language, right? The language of the question was, the key word was intensity, and the answer was coming to that person the answer was in the Mars and Jupiter conjunction. But to me, the answer is in Pluto, because the word intensity is Pluto's word. So Mars and Jupiter together would be, Jupiter is expansion. It's just and it's like how you feel those archetypes. So with Mars, is not intensity. It's like action. It's like movement. It is energy, but it doesn't have to be intense. And it's not, intensity is not Mars. Mars is force. Mars is going. Mars is movement. Mars is force. It is actually force, and it doesn't have to be aggressive. It's just force that moves, right? Jupiter is like a heat, like a expansion, and it's a fire sign, and well, a fire archetype anyway. But it's huge, and it takes up space, and let's stick to one word. Like I say, this is a course in itself, like a month long at least course, or 6 months or whatever, to go through every archetype and show this distinction, and and how to make those distinctions rather. So Jupiter is, like I say, expansion. Pluto is the only intense planet, or rather archetype, right? And even if you have anything else in Scorpio, the intensity doesn't come from the sign. The intensity comes from the planet. And in my experience, and the reason this is such a big theme, and I could have a topic rather, I could have a whole course on it, and I am clogging this particular tutorial with this, so bear with me, I'll be done soon, and we'll go briefly into aspects and then houses, is because it is the actually really key part in understanding what problem you're actually describing. And the moment it's like, how they say, problem something half solved, the more clearly you can identify what planets are speaking through your language around identifying your issues, your pain, your heartache, your troubles, your challenges, the faster, the quicker you get to the root of your problem, or rather, and the answers therefore. So if in your problem there is intensity of some sort, go to Pluto. I'm just now, like I say, simplifying it, but that's why it's so important to listen to your language, but to know the language of archetypes. And that's why the book I keep referring, and it's probably the best I've found so far, that has this most clean language in astrology. Like it really doesn't repeat. So we're not using the pleasure principle beyond Venus. We're not using it on Mars. We're not using it on Jupiter even. We're not using it on Sun. We're using it only on Venus, because that's what it is. And so this book by Rand Butler, Archetypal Universe, that I recommend left, right and center all the time, is the closest I've found myself that it speaks so cleanly of each archetype. So again, highly recommended to understand the language of archetypes. And and that's on that topic. So aspects. I haven't got much to say on aspects, because really there's just one little tip that I may have kind of mentioned before in another context, but here at least it's like under the banner of aspects. So who clicks on this video after, let me just see, 9 minutes, you're getting to that. So again, the point, my point is always to give you more room to give you more choices and more viewpoints from which you can observe yourself and learn about yourself. So with aspects, there are however many, it doesn't matter, squares, oppositions, sextiles, trines, blah, blah. But what you have noticed probably is that often, and I certainly speak of this as well, orbs, and I use them as well as what I'm going to now suggest to you, very much so. But the point there is that it is restrictive, as in, well, it is restrictive by definition. It's like there is that much orb and you use, I don't know, 4 positions, you use 8-degree orb or 5, or I don't know, it doesn't matter. I think everyone has their own kind of version of this. And I have my own, but I know I have different areas and different times I use, I use orbs and then I don't use orbs in other situations. Depends what I'm looking for and what I'm looking at. So I want to show you how I want to, suggest something else instead of orbs, and that is to consider your planets. So let's say to be in aspect by sign. So let's say you have, let's stick in opposition. Let's say you have planet in Taurus and you have planet in Scorpio, and they're nowhere near orb. One is at 0. Let's say at 1 degree Taurus and another planet is at 28 degrees Scorpio. There's no orb, however flexible, in any technically minded astrology book that would suggest that to be in opposition. However, I would very much strongly advise you to consider those 2 planets in opposition, even if they're not at loggerheads literally. So that's the subtle difference. So the direct opposition or direct orb, or rather when they are in orb, aspects in orb, that speaks of something that is just like far more intense and far more, like dynamic, and you're feeling it day in, day out. It's part of your story, if you like. That particular clash, that particular confrontation, that particular conflict, that particular call for integration, etc., etc. It's like front of mind, right, for you. And front of actions. But you might be missing out some really interesting layers, and you might be missing out deepening your relationship with either of these planets if you don't start looking at them as opposition. So although you won't feel it as a kind of constant battle, maybe, as opposition is kind of, one metaphor for positions, so this is how you work with astrology, as opposed to just let astrology do things for you or to you or whatever. It's like you take things and you bring them together, even if they're not meant to be together, as in any kind of aspect directly by orb and whatever. You start kind of testing them out and feeling them out and feeling them as if they are in opposition. And you watch, if you just play with that in your chart, and you'll see all of a sudden, you'll just see. So there'll be like a new level of understanding of yourself as well as those planets and what they stand for. So that's my biggest essentially tip on aspects. Now on houses, I have a separate video. We'll see. It's like I'm showing you kind of a drawing, and I'm showing you essentially a journey that goes like the zodiac. Essentially, wheel is a map for, and then wherever your planets are on that wheel would be houses, but not getting necessarily stuck with just the houses. I'm giving you kind of more lax view of that, hopefully with some interesting pointers there as well. But what I don't think I mentioned, I'm pretty sure I didn't, so I'll do now, is that essentially the house systems is a question. It was bugged me big time. So maybe to give you kind of like a brief history of why this topic is close to my heart, as in why I now look at houses. When I read, I do look at houses, obviously, but at the same time, I don't let that limit me if I feel there is something else, or rather the story is bigger than just that particular house placement. And I consider it on this wider scale of this journey that I just talked to you about, that you'll be seeing in a second. But the reason, like I say, I'm finding just houses the most almost useless, really, useless. I'm not saying they're necessarily useless, but yeah, like divisions that are random and kind of imposed from different, I suppose I was never one of those people who found like, oh, this is a different school of thought, a different romanticizing that how someone in past in history did that and had this way of doing it. I don't know, never really excited me. So the fact that there are so many different house systems kind of tells you something about how they are man-made, And you'll find, the ones I work with are porphyry, just because I found in my own chart they resonate the most with, and it's like I just honor that and do that. But I will consider any. I recently had a client who asked me to do a house system for them I never even heard of, and it's just great. Yeah, it was so fun. So no problem. I can definitely work with anything, any house system. But my point is that house systems are the 4 points you want to know about, and then use them as the relational tool for where your planets are, is the ascendant, descendant, the bottom of the chart, the IC, and the top of the chart, MC. And that's really all you need to know, meaning, and then the in between is on the scale, kind of like a gradient between and I talk about that in the last part of this video. So, okay, so hopefully this is also going to be of interest and helpful, and I will see you next week. Have a great week. So, houses. Let me give you some tips how maybe to think about them differently and work with your planets within your chart in respect to their placements. So not their relationships to each other, but their placements and their relationship to essentially 4 points, critical and sort of static, fixed rather points in your chart, which is the ascendant, the bottom or IC root of the chart, the descendant, and the medium coeli MC or the zenith, the top of your chart. So in relation to those 4 points is how you can also consider your planets, and not maybe getting bogged down with whether they're literally, are they 2 minutes, 2 seconds into a house, or they're on the cusp, or are they just outside it, and all the rest, which, is definitely absolutely one way of looking at it. But if you want to kind of, expand your understanding of your planets and just kind of almost fish for more information from different sources, this is the way to do it. So let me first give you kind of like an overview of this circle, if you like, this pie. So the bottom part here in the black, where I have little black lines, that's all below the horizon, ascendant, descendant here, right? So anything you have in those planets on the kind of very superficial level, like just bullet point sentence would be, they are more private. Those planets you kind of hide from the public eye. So whatever archetypes, whatever storyline is going on below your horizon, those are the planets you keep close to your chest, and only, select few will get to experience them, and you're more protective of them. More to the point, and especially further or closer you get to the IC, more unconscious they become. So when I talk about shadow work and astrology, this is sort of one of the areas also you want to be. Generally, everything that's below here is something that, it's not necessarily shadowy, but you might have to just kind of make yourself familiar and get to know those planets more than maybe. You still don't have to show them to the world. That's absolutely your choice, and that doesn't. You still are doing your shadow work, even if you then choose, this is staying private, I'm not sharing this. That's absolutely legit in my world of shadow work, right? But the point is that you just make them conscious. You bring your conscious awareness to your, whatever it's closer to your, IC particularly. So it could be 3rd house, that's what I mean. It doesn't have to be 4th house. But yeah, even more so maybe 4th house, but I'm sticking with just anything near the IC is at the bottom. It's like at the bottom of the well where it's darkest. So those are particularly important planets to maybe just, get really, really acquainted with, get to know them, bring your conscious awareness to them. So then anything going further up, closer to the ascendant-descendant line, it's going to be kind of becoming more comfortable with the public and with being seen and being shared and being revealed, I suppose, being brought being brought into the daylight, if you like. Now, any planet you have around the ascendant here, so either side of that line, are the planets that you identify most with, are the planets that are so important to your sense of self. So this is the self, right? The ascendant is the self, your sense of self, first and foremost. But it's also what others see most readily about you, what they perceive you as, when they think of you, you come to them as this, your planets around your ascendant. But on this side, on this side here, descendant, anything you have around there, so again, 6th or 7th house, close to the, conjunct the descendant, or close enough, are the planets, are the archetypes, so whatever planets you have there, are the archetypes, are the themes of those planets that you will be encountering and learning about through your relationships, one-to-one relationships. Now, these don't have to be relationships, that's just relating to others, even if it's fleeting, so I'm not saying that you have to be in any particular relationship, long-term or even short-term, but just your encounters, one-to-one encounters with others are your descendant, essentially, and anything you have there. So also, those planets you have around that area will be the themes that others want from you. It's like that's where you are there for them. So if you have Mercury, let's say, there, then you're a great chit-chatter or chatter base. You like to, people love to, not people, just your one-to-one connections and relationships find the most purpose of your connection, their connection with you, through talking to you, through chatting to you. And obviously the conversations, what you talk about, will be very much the sign of the Mercury, for instance, of your Mercury. And then the the top of the chart is, everything that you can't hide. It's like that's your most public, it's your most public self, whatever that is. And if, personal or not personal planets, whatever you have around your MC, is your most public self. But it's also what your contribution to the world, your legacy. And this doesn't have to mean at all any public appearance. It doesn't mean that whatever you have there, even if it's just by the sign of your medium coeli, whatever archetypes and themes you have at the top of your chart, doesn't mean that you will be famous for it, but this will be your mark that will be rippling through the world, like far beyond your immediate environment, far beyond your immediate world, and it will be contributed to the fabric of society in one way or another. Small way, big way, depending, what it is and who you are. And so all of this half of the chart, anything you have, above the ascendant-descendant lines that are kind of colored in yellow, hopefully you can see. So not just your medium coeli, not just the top of your chart, all the planets you have in the upper part of your chart, upper half, are the planets that are visible. And therefore you can still have, like on any planet, it has shadows, very much so. So it's not to say that you shouldn't be doing your shadow work or, getting to know your planets that are above the horizon, but it's like you are aware of them. You are the ones that you are most aware of. It's like if you were to describe yourself, you would probably describe yourself in those terms. Like when you're filling up an application form for a job or going to an interview for a job. So wherever you are kind of entering the society that's less personal, less intimate, that's the kind of what, in few words, how would you describe yourself? Kind of, usually, or rather, typically these would be the planets that, because you are most, like I said, they're just out in the open. The moment you act you come out of your house, and interact with the world, you have encountered them and have kind of worked from and acted from those archetypes most readily and most easily accessible ones. And then another division of the circle of the zodiac wheel is left and right. So I'm going to use different words. So towards the descendant, the half that's on the side of the descendant is any planets you have there, you're kind of, even if it's not literally around the descendant, they're very much dependent on your relationships. Rather, they come alive most in in relationships, and the moment you interact with others, right? Different layers and different ways of interacting with others, but certainly it's like you can't get most out of them, without maybe on your own. You have less of a personal agency when it comes to those planets. They are dependent on the others, on the external stimuli, on stuff coming out of you, outside of you, I meant. Whereby the other half, and so if you think of those archetypes here, we have Capricorn, Aquarius, Pisces, Aries, Taurus, and Gemini. Again, Gemini and Capricorn are being the closest to this vertical, MCIC, they're most socially aware and dependent on the society, on the external groups of people. And then further away you go, Aquarius, Pisces, Taurus, Aries, Pisces and Aquarius are quite further away from, far more solitary, far more independent, in the sense not dependent on the others, on the externals. And so definitely Taurus and Aquarius would already be very much about being separate, being alone, being self-reliant. And then you get into Pisces and Aries, and they're really like just removed from, as you know, Aries is like the ultimate individual, as in one, right? Just one person. There is a different individual in Aquarius and there is different in Aries. Aries is just learning about everything about him or herself. And in that sense, individual that is just so concerned about I, right? I, me. Because that's its purpose. It's here to experiment, to experience itself. That's where Pisces is the other end of that. It's like it's gone through the whole zodiac wheel and it's now releasing, and it's transpersonal. So it really is just, and it's the house of solitariness. It's house of otherworldliness. You're just not in this world anymore. So you're removed so far away and you're on your own there. So this half of the chart would, back to the kind of this division, vertical division, is essentially full of whatever you have there. Those are your planets of personal agency, far more than this other half here, than this. So further this way, closer to the ascendant, whatever your ascendant is, it doesn't matter. Planets you have in that half of the chart are the ones that you feel far more in control of. Where here, that's a good one. Here you don't so much. You feel sometimes at the mercy of fate, of others, of events outside of you that you don't think you control. Where, like I say, the other half here is just full of your personal agency. As I just kind of tried to describe, that these archetypes in a natural zodiac are essentially individuals, far more independent than this half here. And then let me just say something about the journey, essentially, from the ascendant all the way back to itself. So again, whatever planets you have on any of these points and these in-between points would be this journey. It's like how far away you're traveling from the ascendant all the way around. So whatever planets, let's say you have in Taurus, let's say you have your ascendant Aries, whatever planets you have in Taurus, you're halfway between whatever journey ascendant to IC is about. You're halfway there. So at the ascendant, we essentially, it's the encounter with the self. Who are we? You know, it's those questions like, who am I? And it's internal. It's like, that's another reason. It's totally irrelevant. Rather, it's independent of others. Yes, others are there to kind of, you know, and that ascendant archetype will be not, it doesn't mean that it doesn't have relationships, it doesn't communicate, it doesn't have connections, but they always only serve the purpose of that archetype, like, who am I? They're serving just that question of who am I? And then you kind of go, and then the bottom, the IC point, is the first point of that crisis of identity, if you like. So whatever journey. So you start with the question, who am I? And then you, through Aries and Taurus and Gemini, or first, second, and third house rather, you encounter, you kind of, what do you do? How do you explore? You sort of, you start with your body, you start with what you have, you start with, your appearances, how you act, you just kind of whatever, one uses to define oneself. You explore that, you experiment with it, and then you kind of collect all that data, and you go older, you learned what you learned, and then you have a crisis. And by crisis, I really mean that you just kind of all of a sudden find yourself at the bottom of, or rather underneath all that you just discovered. You discover there is far more below whatever you kind of thought, okay, yeah, here I assembled my sense of self. There is far more stuff going on underneath, and you're in the fourth house, or rather you're in the IC. IC is also like, it's the darkest point of the chart, essentially. It's where we kind of sink into when we go through any dark night of the soul. We turn into our IC. We go there because there is safety there as well, because it's the furthest away from everyone and anyone. So you can be, but it's full of our own darkness, demons, inner demons. And skeletons, and all the kind of musty basements. But it's as anyone who's been through any kind of form of dark night of the soul would know that it's the most creative part. You start to kind of pick out parts of you and confront parts of you and see yourself in a different way, and you just start almost like reinventing yourself. So that kind of reinvention slowly but surely goes up between the IC and descendant. And you after spending some time in that pit, in that bottom, or at that bottom, the sun starts to shine slowly but surely through Leo, and you start to get creative about who you are actually. But yeah, okay, not what you thought maybe between ascendant and IC, but or rather you'll get wiser, and there is more to you, and there is depth there, and emotions, and there's all kinds of stuff. So you start to get creative of how you now repackage that, and how you add that to who you are. And then you come up to the Virgo, and then you purify, you kind of, just use your discernment, get practical about it, clean the basement, metaphorically speaking. And then you come to the descendant, and that's now, if the ascendant was in a confrontation, you have confronted yourself, you have gone, okay, who am I? Now, at the descendant, it's a sort of forced confrontation in the sense that you're now facing others. And so who are you in relation to others? Who are you to others? So those are the questions that these planets you have. This is not transit. This is the storyline of the zodiac. So you just pick where on this journey your natal planets in your chart are. And you sort of start digging around that particular chapter in this journey, if you like, in this story. So you get to the seventh house, the descendant, and it's like I say, so who am I in relation to others? So whatever you have in seventh or around descendant is like, who am I to others? Who do they think I am? It basically just testing yourself against your friends, your family, or any one-to-one connections, society. But far more personal. It's personal. And then you get into the eighth house, or rather Scorpio, so it gets intimate. So who of these people that you have identified yourself against, as in for better or worse, or whatever, you have refined your sense of self in relation to others. Now you're kind of left with a few that you still feel like there is some room for growth, some room for getting closer, some room for having them deepening the connection and the relationship. That's the Scorpio 8th house, where you get more intimate, and this can be sexual and love, that sense of kind of connection, but it can be any intimate friendship that it's like you're revealing yourself on a far deeper level. Is 8th house, any kind of intimacy. And then you start figuring out what's going on. Power games could seep in, and because you're now far more vulnerable, so you're kind of learning about power and trust in that kind of between the descendant and the MC, and closer to the MC as you go, you kind of, those lessons are learned, and you're now making sense of them, like creating your beliefs around, okay, so now I believe in myself, not I just believe in myself, but I now this is who I am. You have by now really established who you are. It's like you've been through quite a few trials, and by now you quite know who you are, and you're around that sense of self, far more crystallized and refined. You are building your beliefs, your life philosophy, what it means to be a human, as per you, right? And with all that, you come to the MC as in the top of your chart, and here is hello world, here I come, and you then you're very comfortable in that MC spot because of the journey you've done. So whatever you have in the MC, in other words, or rather around the MC, are the planets you are. If you had to be, let's say you're not really keen on public speaking, but if you had to be, and you probably, so let me just actually finish this. So whatever whatever planets you have at the MC, it means that if you had to be speaking publicly, that's the archetype to speak from. That's the most comfortable place to be public. And then you move further away from the MC, and then you're back into the individual, but it's now you're so full of you, but not in a sort of egotistical sense. I mean, just like you're complete, really. By the time we get to Aquarius, 11th house, we are the most emancipated version of ourselves, but that step is still kind of between, when you're kind of entering into the 11th house, even if you're not sticking with the exact orbs and the exact, cusps, the further away from the MC towards the ascendant again, the more you will be leaving that world, that society, that public stage, and sort of having a bit of another crisis that is, and the crisis is usually around like, is this serving just to keep perpetuating the same old, or am I really bringing something new, refreshing, some new blood, new views, new vistas, something that will reinvigorate the society, the world. So when we are into the sort of 11th house, Aquarius, further away from MC, we are kind of leaving the MC behind us, and we are far more interested in breaking new ground, because we spent enough time sort of building the traditional, or building something, or building ourselves to fit into the what's built society, right? And then you realize, well, actually, I'm just now, the same old. We need to, like any life needs to be rejuvenated, needs to be kept fresh and alive, as opposed to stale and stagnant, which can easily happen at the MC if we get too cozy. So whatever planets you would have there, though this is the theme, these are the kind of cautions you might want to be speaking when you're engaging with a planet. Like, are you just too comfortable in this perception, how world sees you? Do you not want to, do you need to maybe think of ways of renewing yourself, renewing your contribution to the world, and adding something new and fresh to it. And then we go from that to Pisces, which is the 12th house, so back to the ascendant essentially. And it's about, almost like it's letting go of everything. So it's like the trap of the ascendant, and the point of this approaching the ascendant planet that's closer, the back end of the ascendant, so coming from the 12th house, the point of those planets is to make you not get too identified with whatever they are, because this journey you just made, you've done it, it's done its job. And this is, like I say, don't forget, this is applicable to your natal planets fixed in your chart as they are. This is not just about transits. This is how you can mix and match, use the transits descriptions in any astrology book, in any article, in any blog, to actually apply to your personal planets, whether by aspect, whether by sign, whether whatever. So the point of the 12th house is to just, it's like all the clothes, all the wardrobe that you have just bought and you wore for, let's say, a year or whatever. Now it's, or 2 or 5 years, whatever. And it's like, okay, it's worn out. It's like, it doesn't fit me anymore. It doesn't suit my style anymore. I just don't feel comfortable in those clothes anymore. And those conversations are maybe, you might think you feel comfortable, or rather you're too comfortable, but they just look out of shape, on you, and you lost that shape. That's the 12th house. You just kind of start to take your old clothes off and you know, get naked privately, very privately. This is the most private house. Well, all water houses are private. Fourth house here, the bottom of the chart, is probably most private. So yeah, so you're kind of letting go and just preparing for a new sense of self that will come as the planets approach the ascendant. So in conclusion, if no matter what house system you want to use, and I would, you know, say experiment and even not, you know, not stick to just one or just play with all of them, but essentially do away with them for 1 week and just consider your planets just in relation to ascendant, descendant, IC, MC, how far they are between each of those points, and what on this journey of self-discovery essentially and self-realization and self-actualization you are, and bearing in mind what these 4 points mean. And then kind of you'll see how you'll almost like find those archetypes of planets will all of a sudden have a greater freedom of expression. You'll uncover some pockets of theirs that have not been used, and they're just so lovely and so add something really sparkly and new. It's like finding clothes that are, you know, you forgot you had, but actually, you know, now they actually fit you even better than before, and you didn't wear them because they weren't you then, but now they are, and you just like love it now all of a sudden, like a lease of new life, as it were. Okay, so hopefully that was helpful, and I'll be back with another tutorial next week. Till then, bye bye.